So I'd like to welcome to the podium Anthony. Thank you. It's very important.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks everyone for coming along today and inviting me to speak. So quick intro to REDARC. As Mike said, we're based in South Australia, almost 40 years old. A company that I purchased in 1997 when we had 8 people, based in a shed in Lonsdale in South Australia. We've obviously transformed the company over the last 20 plus years, and today just over 200 staff, roughly 170 plus full-time equivalent people. We have ISO 9001, 14001 accreditations, based head office in Lonsdale with a end-to-end manufacturing facility, so a traditional manufacturing facility from taking a customer order to dispatching product and every process in between. We have a nice supply chain in South Australia, sourcing as much as possible within the Australian market as we can. We have, I think, around about 50 engineering staff, both in R&D and in manufacturing engineering, production engineering, and around about 30 technicians who are people that we I guess from a Cert 4 up to diploma, advanced diploma levels. So Industry 4.0 for us, and a traditional definition of where the internet meets manufacturing is definitely applicable to us, and for us it means it's opportunity. It's about how we can, I guess, take our products and make them smarter, make them connected. It's how we can make our machines connected, and it's how we can connect our people to both our machines and to our products. So it's linking all of those factors in the business. It's digitising our business, and most importantly, it's a key, what I call a foundation pillar of our current strategic plan. So our journey in Industry 4.0 actually formally started in 2015. I went to a presentation, I think it was an Australian Industry Group presentation about Industry 4.0, and I sat next to a gentleman, Frank from Fraunhofer, from Germany, and I invited Frank to our facilities. I had met Frank some 10 years earlier and said, look, we need to be involved in Industry 4.0. So from that meeting I then hired Fraunhofer to do an audit of our business, which occurred around that 2016 period, and we then set about to define our top 3 objectives of what we wanted to achieve at our stage of growth in Industry 4.0. The number 1 objective for REDARC is about business model innovation. Secondly, it's about our product roadmap and our technology roadmap, and then also our process roadmap, so our smart factory. Of course, that wasn't an inexpensive exercise in working with Fraunhofer, and I think we got them. They came back at least a further 2 occasions as part of that process, and so I'm a strong believer that obviously if we're paying for experts, we want to make sure that we take their advice and implement it. So as I mentioned, when we defined our current 2020 strategic plan, Industry 4.0 is definitely a key element in that particular plan. So we've engaged in this business in a model innovation process, and Joran Roos spent a lot of time speaking about manufacturing in the future, particularly in South Australia, and so we understand that we need to digitise our business. We're about also making sure that we put a low touch point on Earth, and I guess empowering it's all about the customer. A factory and employees don't exist without customers, so we want to empower our customers with information. And if we can give our customers the information from our products, then obviously they're going to buy more of our products. So that connectivity of product, which I'll give an example shortly, is very important. So the first thing we set about to do was we needed a new ERP system. And The reason we needed that was we had a fairly old clunky system that we'd put in place in about 2004, and it really didn't mean that any of our machines could connect in and put live data, live stock control, live productivity measurements. Our CRM system couldn't link into the system. Our human resource, payroll and other human resource functions, we wanted that to go paperless, so we needed to provide employee kiosks, so where people could log in and apply for leave or fill out any particular form of documentation that they needed from home, effectively. And most importantly, our business is driven by new product development. For every dollar of sales that we make, 15 cents is invested back into R&D. So we needed a really strong project portfolio management system, and that needed to link, our engineers' times, our project managers, all that data back into our system as well. So we've got one home for all of this information. So in terms of looking at where our factory fits, we're almost at the intersection of those three lines. We're neither fully mass customization nor fully lights out. We've got elements of both, but we're also, investing heavily in automation. So we need to, look at our productivity that we're getting from that high asset investments. But we also offer the customer to buy one product, enabling customers to specify exactly what they want in their product. You don't have to just take exactly what's off the shelf. So mass customization is one of our strengths as well. So we're trying to juggle all these different things into our factory as we grow. So we want to give customer choice, but we also want to get the productivity gains from having high volume runs if at all possible. So some of the key things that we've been doing in the last couple of years, and the picture shows an operator selecting a piece of raw material to insert in one of our products, and you can see the lights. There's a green light and a reddy yellow colour light there, and that's called pick by light. And so, we have, in the past, we've had a work instruction or an SOP. Pick by light, what actually happens is the light's telling the operator where the next component, which bin it needs to come from. In the future, of course, that will be, and it's not very far away, there'll be three-dimensional models on a screen for the operator to actually see how that part all goes together in 3D in real time, so that they can actually do the operation and assemble the product as they're doing that particular job. We're definitely heavily researching. We've in fact donated a robot to Flinders University, and we're looking at what they call now cobots, where we have a robot working right next to an operator. Just simple tasks like packaging products or labelling products, these sorts of mundane tasks, taking that away from the operator so they can do more higher value added tasks. And I think the key strength for a manufacturer is having that real-time information. Traditionally, we're looking at statistics, what happened last month, last week, last year. We want real-time information to be able to make decisions. And that's what this new technology allows us to do. Another one thing I talk to particularly our staff about is that as a manufacturer based in Australia, we have that Achilles heel of labour cost, but if we can design things really, really smart, then we can reduce the amount of human touch per product. We don't want to have products where you have to put Louis Vuitton logos on the product. We want to be able to have low touch so that we can sell them for fair value. But so in the past that might be just simple things like eliminating screws, but now it's actually going much further in terms of considering additive manufacturing, products that are pre-programmed, and connected products, as I've mentioned. So this is a product that we just released in 2018. It's essentially an energy management system for a caravan, a motorhome. And what this system does, it allows the operator through an iPhone app effectively to control every appliance in their motorhome. What levels of water, look at the energy, turn the lights off from the comfort of their bed or from the chair next to their campfire. But also for us to gather a lot of information about their energy usage in a vehicle and be able to help them manage their energy, because particularly our sorts of customers aren't staying in a caravan park. They're staying somewhere on the Canning Stock route or towards Cape York or these sorts of harsh areas, so they need to know exactly, making sure that their food's are well looked after and the beer is cold. So in designing these sorts of products, obviously we need designing and maintaining them and adding customer service and after-sales service. We need people that obviously are very digitally competent. That doesn't mean, well, I guess what that means to me is that they've got a trade, but they've been upskilled in understanding how to deal with these sorts of technologies. And one thing that Joran Roos has really pushed for us is about servitisation. And what we mean there is, it's not about, we're not about selling widgets anymore. We're about selling a service. So we want to make sure that, there's value add that we can add to the customer, because we can buy a product equivalent to REDARC 30% cheaper that's made in a low-cost country. So why would you pay 30% more for our product? Obviously quality, Australian made, all these nice things we'd like to say. What we'd hope though is that we can provide the user with a lot more information. We can help them, give them information about where they can go and get it serviced, where they can get advice from, all these other bits of information which are valuable both to the customer and to our business. So, obviously the skills are changing. I think the core skills remain the same, but we really want to upskill people in understanding, in our industry, electronics. It's about this connectivity. It's about programming, working with machines that are far more computer controlled and linked. And I guess, what we understand is that we just can't rely on TAFEs or universities to provide all that training. So as a business, quite a number of years ago, we made the decision that we will fully fund any of our employees' education. So joining REDARC, you're offered the opportunity to undertake any particular course that you would like to upskill yourself. And we find that really, obviously, again, we can't have the lowest cost labour. So what do we need? We need the smartest people. And so we invest in our people, and that helps greatly with retention of our staff as well, and providing a career path so people can see when they join us, maybe as a 16 or a 17-year-old, that there's a long career path for them, a long journey that they can follow within our business. So we're trying to get away from the mindset that you need to move companies every 3 years to be successful. You may well have seen this slide before, just a couple of points that I guess I want to focus on, and really it's on probably number 2 and number 3 in the 2020 area, which is around critical thinking and creativity. So we're really looking for young people, if they're coming on as straight from high school to join us as an apprentice, we're looking for them to have those STEM skills to be able to enable them to undertake critical thinking and also to display creativity. And that means, for us, it's about having an environment where innovation is blessed and enabled to thrive. Just simple things, amount of communication, open door policy, the education, taking on board people's ideas and acting on them, employee surveys, all of these sort of things where we can gauge how people are feeling about the company. But we find that the more we can act on their ideas, the more quickly we can implement them, the more creative they are. Really actually delighted to see some of the suggestions coming from our younger people in the business. Joran actually made an interesting comment to me. He said that the best employees, I can't remember if it was exactly around Industry 4.0, but potentially around this new digital world, the people who have only been with you for 5 years, or the people that are in their last 5 years of their career. the people have only been with you for 5 years. Obviously, their ICT skills are pretty good, and they're on their iPhones and on their technology at home. And the people that are in the last 5 years of their career don't care if they upset people. They're happy to be creative. They're happy to give you their ideas and speak off the cuff. And we certainly value both ends of the scale, because I think it gives you, that nice environment. We've got wisdom and young, and giving that mentoring and seeing a company thrive. A couple of quick examples, and to be honest, I don't know too much about them, but I've read a little bit about University 42, the campus in Paris and the campus in Fremont in the USA. But this is about almost it's obviously digital technology and software development, but quite an interesting model of how they recruit people into the university. They don't really care about your background, as long as you're, I think, between 18 and 45, and quite a rigorous process to see if you and put you through quite intensive work to see if you actually make the grade. Start off with something like 3,000 candidates come in, and very quickly a couple of thousand of them drop out just because of the sheer intensity of the process, and end up with a core group of roughly 1,000 students that they take on board to educate in digital technologies. So it's quite an interesting model, funded by I think a French billionaire successful in the telecommunications industry, so privately funded. And then one that I'm sure you've spoken today, but one that I know with Australian Industry Group and South Australian Government, we're looking at doing a similar, using some of this base technology, I guess, in South Australia, and having an a qualification or accreditation around Industry 4.0. So I think Swinburne certainly have, learnt, have gone through a process very early on, first mover advantage, learnt some of the good things, I guess some of the bad things, and we'll have a mature product which is surely to be successful, I would believe. Just a quick introduction from me, hopefully to get some questions, but I'd like to hand back to Mike. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anthony.